Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about MMOs. We're going to be looking at and understanding why they're in a bit of a rough state at the moment, a rough position, and try to think and explore and discuss why that might be. So, MMOs. Firstly, I'm no game dev. I'm no game journalist. I'm just a guy who spent 20 years playing games and spent 15 years playing MMOs and who just cares a lot about them and who enjoys asking questions. So, this will be my take, my opinion, my thoughts, of which hopefully you'll find interesting. So, let's take a look at MMOs, shall we? Rather than explain, let's show. Let's take a look at the top 14 MMOs. This list is made by mmopopulation.com, and this is their list by population. So, number one, World of Warcraft, came out in 2004. Destiny 2, not really what I would call a traditional typical MMO, not in this case, but came out in 2017. Number 3, Old School RuneScape, 2001. Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn, 2013. World of Warcraft Classic, once again, 2004. Roblox, 2006. Elder Scrolls Online, 2014. Elite Dangerous, once again, not really a standard traditional MMO, but 2014. RuneScape 3, an overhaul of the original RuneScape. This came out in 2013. Guild Wars 2, 2012. Star Citizen, hasn't even been released yet. Black Desert Online, 2014, Star Wars The Old Republic, 2011, and EVE Online, 2003. Now, doesn't take a genius there to realize that we haven't had a popular, successful MMO in 7 years. And this accurately describes, this observation explains why the MMO genre is in a little bit of a state right now. Because MMOs are still popular. That list sort of proves that there are millions of people who play MMOs. MMOs are a huge genre. And yet we haven't had a successful MMO released in 7 years. That's a long time. Just compare that to FPS genre or to a racing genre, any other genre of game who have multiple releases every single year. So why? That's what I want to discuss and explore. Why has it been 7 years since we've had a new MMO? And it's very easy, observing this, it's very easy to understand why people who love the genre are so desperate for new things, for new games, for new experiences, because it's been so long since we've had them. Now, all of these games do and continue to have expansions, yes. And some of them, like World of Warcraft, almost completely reinvent themselves when they do have an expansion. Whereas other ones are sort of more typical and just do slight iterations and have a lot more content with their expansions. So it's not like these games aren't being updated. But an expansion is exactly what it says. It's an expansion. It's an expansion on an existing game. That means that it is constrained to the original game itself, to the original design, to the original systems, to the original philosophies. And even if you make an attempt to reinvent the game and to be very bold with your innovations, you're still constrained by the original game itself. WoW is still very much WoW, despite the fact that it's been through so many expansions and it feels very different. It still has many of the fundamental same feels and systems and ideas behind it. So if you're obviously enjoying those games, then you know those expansions are good. They keep you interested, but it doesn't necessarily give us something a new game. You know, it doesn't fulfill that need where we want to explore a new world with innovative new systems that require a new game in order to explore new characters, new classes, all that kind of newness that will come with a new game. Especially when you just think of the technical advances, because many of these games are constrained by the original systems. But in the last 7 to 15 years, right, there's been huge technical advantages, which many of these expansions can't necessarily take advantage of. It will require building a game from the ground up to fully take advantage of. So even though these games do have expansions, still highlights a bit of a problem in the space that we haven't had a new successful game in 7 years. So why might that be? Well, what's my take on why that might be? Well, an unfortunate truth is that in the last sort of 10 to 15 years, the gaming industry has, I guess, dare I say, become more capitalized. It's become much bigger. It's become a lot more successful, which in many ways is a good thing, but therefore money is becoming an increasingly major component of it. And the large game developers nowadays, large publishers, are large corporate entities with huge numbers of shareholders they need to answer to. Now, money plays a huge part of it. Now, we have had a massive spike in indie developers in the recent years, made so much more possible by platforms like Steam, where it's so easy to make your own game and release your own game and self-publish your own game. But MMOs, almost by definition, are AAA entities because they are huge. You're building a world. You're building a world with so much stuff to do that people can play for weeks and months and years on end. They are massive things. And to build a massive, full MMO, you need hundreds of people working for years, for 3 to 5+ years to build. They are very big and they're very costly to build. And because of that, there's a huge amount of risk involved because you need to spend tens of millions of pounds or tens of millions of dollars building a game. And if it sucks, right? It's going to be hard to get your money out of that because it just costs so much to build. And the unfortunate truth is that the big publishers and the big developers who are capable of building MMOs just simply don't seem interested in it because it's so risky. It takes so many people, so many years, and so much money to build. And there's far easier things to do that can generate huge amounts of revenue. Like, will a big publisher who's just focused on profitability and revenue spend years building an MMO, or they churn out 10 or 20 mobile games and chuck them full of cash shop and pay to win and microtransactions? You know, we've seen they're just going to go towards the mobile games, or at the very least, they're going to build AAA games that build very heavily and very similarly on previous titles. I'm just thinking about FPS games like Call of Duty, which release every year, or Assassin's Creed games, or these other open world titles. Certainly, games which are much easier to build than MMOs. So even though the MMO genre is still really big, and even though huge numbers of people still play them, the big publishers who are capable of building MMOs just don't seem to want to take on that risk and to make that investment into building a game when there are other easier options out there and easier things to monetize. And unfortunately, I think the same increased focus on revenue and profitability also explains why we've had a drastic increase in aggressive monetization of our existing MMOs, where a cash shop now is almost given, whereas it never used to exist before in MMOs, for example. Now, I'm actually going to have a whole separate video, so stay tuned to listening to my thoughts on how different monetization strategies of MMOs and the profit incentives that they create actually have a fundamental change and pressure on the developer's design of a game. But suffice to say, monetization, how we have seen increasing monetization and aggressive monetization in our MMOs that are out there. And I think it's this reason, this increased focus on money and profitability and revenue increase, which is why we haven't necessarily seen a new MMO come out and these game devs want to invest, because I think there's just other places where they can feel they can be more effective with that money. So, I mean, is there hope? Is there hope on the horizon? And the answer is kind of. There's kind of hope. So New World is coming out on August 31st of this year. That is going to be a AAA MMO experience, and I'm going to cover it in great detail here because I, as an MMO player, starve for new games. At the very least, that's going to be, up-to-date engine, up-to-date graphics, a modern take on the MMO genre at the very least. And as a result of it, it's going to be successful because everyone's going to play it because everyone's looking for that new experience. Whether it's successful for the long term we're just going to have to see on how good the game is, but it's certainly going to be successful in the short term. So we've got that to look forward to. That's made by Amazon Game Studios, so it's had a lot of money behind it. There is some room in the indie space as well. I said that indie developers are prohibitive for them to build an MMO because they simply don't have the capital and the money to build them. But Crowfall is theoretically coming out this year. That's a Kickstarted backed MMO with reasonable scale, so that might be interesting. I think the big one, which is sort of carrying the weight and expectations of the entire community, is Ashes of Creation. which is a self-funded game publisher built by a guy with huge amounts of money who is an MMO player like us who just wants to build an MMO. He's building it to make a great game, not because he wants to get lots of money out of it. Now, doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be successful, but I think why the community has absolutely fallen in love with Ashes of Creation is because of the design behind it, the motivations and the reasons behind it. They're building the game for the right reason and for love and passion in their hearts. Ashes of Creation is going to be very interesting to see how well it does, and it's going to be very ambitious, and that should be coming out in the next couple of years. And my hope is that Ashes of Creation will fundamentally shake up the MMO genre, because if Ashes of Creation is successful, it will be massively successful, because the only games it will have to compete with will be by that point 8, 10, 12, 14 years old. It's going to be very difficult for those games to compete with Ashes of Creation if it is successful. Secondly, if they hold true to their word and they keep that design philosophy of respecting their players and by not aggressively monetizing them, then that in and of itself will be massively successful. People will flock to them because they will feel like they're being respected as gamers. That means that I think that could be a fantastic challenge and shake up to the market, where it'll make all of these other game developers who have skin in the game and new entrants into the genre. It sets a really high bar for them to then try and compete and beat. And so I think that's my big hope for Ashes, is not like, obviously I wanted to be successful because I wanted to, I'm really excited about the game. I want to play the game, but I also really want it to be successful because I want to make all the other big game developers, all the big MMO game developers scramble to keep up and to sort of force them to try better Ashes of Creation. Is that element of competitiveness, which can actually be really healthy, right? All of these new game devs now trying to make a better game, because the only way you're going to be better than Ashes is by making a better game, and that's how you're going to get your players back. So there is hope on the horizon. There is hope on the horizon, but we're going to need to be patient. And the unfortunate truth is that we're needing to put our eggs in a very few set of baskets, right? We've got New World, Crowfall, Ashes of Creation. There's some Eastern MMOs that are coming over and getting translated. There are other bits and bobs, but we're very short on AAA MMOs coming out in the future. But I think that's where we'll leave this discussion today. I just wanted to explore my take on my thought on, firstly, that the MMO genre is in a bit of a pickle right now and why that might be, and actually how a fundamental sort of shift in the focus of big game developers, who are the only ones really capable of building these games, has led to a drop off of them being built in the first place because there's just easier things to do. But I would love to hear your opinion. Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm talking rubbish? Pop down your thoughts in the comments below. Do stick around. As I said, we've got a video coming out on how the monetization model of an MMO can actually inform the design decisions and the pressures of design on game devs. I also stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays every week. Twitch link in the bio down below. Come join me. Come join the community. Come join our discussions. We have a lot of fun. Until then, happy adventuring, guys, and I will see you next time.